All right. How's that looking, Nigel?
Well, good.
Brilliant. Well, I think we might get going. We've got a good number of people on the line. So welcome everyone to today's webinar. We've called it The Secrets of Bidding Success. And the people that we had in mind were all you lovely people. If you're like me and my good colleague Nigel, we've got a big year of bidding ahead of us. So what we thought we'd do is try and set out a pathway for to help you find a way to bid smarter, not harder in 2024. And sort of sitting behind the scenes is showing you the role that well-targeted effective training can have in that process. So this session is brought to you by the Bid Academy, which is the training business of BidRite, Australia's leading bidding consultancy. And my name is Mark Riley. I'm a principal with BidRite based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm also the GM of the Bid Academy. I'm very excited to have managed to wrestle our CEO, Nigel Dennis, away from his day-to-day duties to join us on the call today. Do you want to say a quick hello, Nigel?
Yes, hello. I'm lovely to have you here and looking forward to a wonderful 2024, big 2024. So let's get into it, Mark.
Excellent stuff. All right, folks, you're all sitting there quietly looking like a lovely long list on my screen, but I want to talk to you. All right, so get ready to chuck things in the chat and stuff like that. Here we go. We're going to open up with a bit of a conversation. Well, it's not going to be a conversation, but I'm going to ask you guys, what's bidding looking like for you in 2024? Does it look like that image on the screen there, whereas there's a clear but a sizable mountain that you've got to get through in 2024? Does it feel like your bidding effort in 2024 is going to be one of your many other responsibilities that you need to get done? Or are you standing around the corner of a very fast end at the Australian Open, Australian Grand Prix, let's say, and you've got no idea what's coming around, how fast and what's going to happen? So get ready in the chat function. Hopefully everyone can see that. What I'm going to do is get you to vote. All right, so if you can, if your 24 looks like a clear but sizable mountain that you've got to climb, pop A in the chat. If bidding is just one of your way too many responsibilities and it's like, how am I going to get it all done, chuck B in the chat. If you've got absolutely no idea what's coming around the corner in 2024, pop C in the chat. Or if you've got, you fancy a bit of bidding therapy and you just want to connect with like-minded individuals, just pop a D in the chat plus a couple of words that it says what it's going to be like for you in 2024. How's it looking on the chat side, Nigel? I'm just going to...
A's and the C's, Mark. A bit of a spread between A's and C's, the odd B. The A's probably have it, actually. The A's probably have it at the moment.
Excellent stuff. Well, that's good to know. So it sounds like you've got a rough idea what's coming, but there's lots of it maybe. And so what we want to do, we've got a B in there. Andrew's got a B. What else we've got?
D.
Matt's got a C. Charlotte's got a D, some known, but some coming out of the blue.
Love to hear from Jess what the D is, what that D is. Jess Newman, what's your D? Love to hear that. Pop it in the chat. Yeah, great stuff. Oh, good stuff.
I like it. Love a bit of
done.
outburst of positivity. Love it.
Yes.
That's brilliant stuff. Well done, Jess.
Brilliant.
All right. Thanks for that, folks. Just gives us a few ideas on where to twist and turn as we go through this little session of ours. All right, so let's just set out the shape of the session. It's a session of two halves. We're going to firstly talk about, these are 4 areas that we think will make the biggest difference. If you've got a big target you've got to meet in 2024, these are the 4 areas that we think you can concentrate on to help you work towards that end goal of bidding smarter, not harder. So first up, we're going to talk to you about how to get strategic. Nigel's going to talk about that. He's also going to cover off some of the research that we do as a bidding organization around what's often missing in tenders. So we look at hundreds and hundreds of tenders a year and across all sorts of different industries and try and connect them back to best practice and work out what's in there that's good and what's missing, and therefore what are the opportunities for people that need to bid smarter, not harder. Then the second half, so Nigel's going to take us through 1 and 2, and then I'm going to sort of take over and just go through some of the things that you could add into your bidding armory, if you like, some tools and techniques that hopefully will add a bit of value so that whatever happens in the end of this session, you'll get something that you can take away and do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how do you actually get it done in the context of a couple of our transformative training programs, the Certified Bid Writer and the Bid Accelerator program, which is essentially the next generation of learning as far as we are concerned in the bidding world. We've taken a lot of insights from how adults learn and behave in the workplace and try to build programs that are effective. So that's the name of the game. I might hand over to Nigel, who's just going to take us through the first couple of those segments.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Mark. All right, let's move straight into what. Look, now let's the biggest thing that we see often in bidding, and that we're focused on often bidding people, busy people. We are deadline focused, and often we are focused on the next deadline, or the next bid, or the next question we got to answer inside that bid, or the next review session we've got to hold inside a bid. We often don't see too much of the looking at it from a bigger picture view. We are details get involved down in the weeds and just getting that deadline driven thing down. And many of you put in the chat about the A's. We've got a mountain to climb, got a lot to do. So let's think about how we can do that better. And one of the ways that we believe you can do that is getting more strategic around your company bidding objectives. And the wonderful thing about bidding is that it's very defined. We got a defined effort in, and we get a return on investment out. So our effort in means that someone else, we put a bid in, we put a submission in, and someone else is going to be judging us on our efforts. And that judge will determine whether we get that contract or someone else gets that contract. You get it or someone else. So let's have a look at what you ideally need to measure, because we can't improve our efforts if we don't measure it. It's a fundamental basics of business. So let's have a look at return on investment. We're going to talk return on investment. We're going to talk getting strategic, and we're going to look at the sort of things you need to measure to make your efforts worthwhile, to measure your efforts and get your best bang for your buck. So Mark, let's jump into those right now. There's actually 4 things we need to measure, and we're going to help do some maths. It's not very complex maths, but we're going to look at some maths. So there's 4 key metrics. The first one of those is you should define, and we're talking about on an annual basis, what your annual contestable revenue target. In layman's words, that means how much do you want to win each year in terms of contracts, size, numbers, dollars, from your efforts, from your bidding efforts. And typically, it's a percentage of your overall contract revenue. It could be as low as 5 or 10, could be 25 or 30. Some companies rely a lot on bids, so they're going to be 80 or 90%. So the first thing to do is, what's your goal? If we don't have a goal, then how can we measure towards it? And then what we want to do is then say, okay, let's measure our bid effectiveness. And our bid effectiveness is how successful our efforts are in winning. And by that, we measure our proposal win rate. If you think of it on a global scale, we think, well, there's typically 4 companies bidding. We win our fair share. So 4 companies bid, we win our fair share. Our bid proposal win rate is going to be 25%. You can break that down by size of bid. You can measure just your large bids. You can measure your small bids. You can measure your bids in certain industries, have different win rates for different industries, if you like, if you're involved in many. But one thing we do got to measure is how successful we are in bidding. And it's a pretty standard thing. A lot of people talk about win rates. Proposal people alone can't affect those win rates, but at least as a business, we need to measure those things. The third one is the average contract size. And again, it depends on whether you want to, let's say you're after $10 million worth of business in a year. You can win that in one of 2 ways. Put in one bid and get $10 million and win it for a $10 million contract, or you can break that down and get 5 $2 million contracts. So, and that will determine, as we see in a moment, about the number of bids that we need to chase. The last one, the last metrics that we should measure is something that we call the BIR, the bid investment ratio. And this is a measure of your efficiency. So how good are you or your organization is at bidding. And again, if we measure it, we've got a baseline, a benchmark that we can improve on it for subsequent years. So, Mark, let's delve into the outputs. So they're the inputs you need. They're the things you need to measure. And then we're going to look at the measurements that come from those key metrics. So let's look at the first one, Mark. And there's some simple maths here. And we've got a summary at the end so you can see how it all brings together and an example. First one of those is, first up, what is the total value of bids you need to chase? All right, how many of those? What's the contract size we need to chase? And that is typically how much do you want your annual target revenue divided by your win rate. If you target $10 million and your win rate is 25%, then you need to find C1. You need a total value of bids to chase of $40 million. Okay, we'll do the numbers shortly. Second key calculation is how many bids you need to submit. Okay, we need to find $10 million. How many bids do we need to find? And that's driven by your contract size. So we've got our $40 million. We want an average contract size of 2 million. We need to find 20 bids to actually chase, all right, which is the value, 40 million divided by the average contract size of 2 equals our number of bids to find and submit. So we need to find, your BD, your salespeople, your pursuit people need to find 20 bids that you need to submit on if you want to get your $10 million at 25%. Simple, right? Third one, how many bids do you need to win? Simple, okay, the number of bids you need to find, which we've just done that, C2, just done that rate, that by your proposal win rate, take what you did last year, our win rate was 25%. So if we need 20 bids and we've got a 25% win rates, then the number of bids you need to win is a quarter of those. So that's the number of bids you need to win to get your value of your target value. And the fourth one, very simply, is then your annual bidding investment. This is something that not too many people measure. We've got to measure in dollars, but you can also measure in hours. And how do you measure that? It's typically the value of bids you need to find. Right, so your $40 million, if you want to get $10 million worth of contracts, by your bid investment ratio. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but your bid investment ratio is basically the effort of bidding, and it's a ratio typically, or a percentage, and it's going, and that if you multiply those two things together, then you'll get your annual bidding investment. So what your company is prepared to invest to get your return on that investment. And it's simply, we target between 1 to 3% or 0.5 to 3% of the contract value is typically the bidding investment ratio. All right, so let's see how put those together, and then we'll see how they play. So the 4 ones are this. You find your total value of bids you need to chase. All right, how many bids do you need to find of that? How many bids do we need to win? And then what's our annual bidding investment? And they're the calculations. If you do that, it's very simple maths. If you do that, then when we can see how that plays out. Mark, let's go to an example, because this will hopefully bring it home very simply. So let's have a look at the first up, the metrics. Let's say you want your target for this 2024 is $10 million. And you can drop the zero off or add a couple of zeros on, depending on how large your company is. Let's say we want to get $10 million worth of contracts. Our revenue last year was 8 million. We want to grow that to $10 million through bids this year. So that's the target we have. That's our goal. So we want to get to. That's what we want to achieve at the end of the year. Let's say our proposal win rate is 25%, 1 in 4. Typical industries. Some companies are a lot lower than that. Some companies are a bit higher. But let's say it's an industry average around about 1 in 4. And let's say our average contract size is 2 million. Again, you can break that down into industries or different sizes of bids. But let's say the example is 2 million. And let's say our bid investment ratio is 2%. So 2% of everything that we spend, everything that we make, we're going to invest in bidding. So let's see how all those play out. So quite simply, the total value of bids that we need to chase is $10 million at our win rates of 1 in 4. We need to find, or your sales people, BD people need to find $40 million worth of contracts that we can bid on at a $2 million average contract size. C2 then becomes 20. $40 million divided by average contract size equals our 20 bids to submit. At a win rate of 25%, we need to win 5 of those 20. And our annual bidding investment is, we need to chase $40 million worth of bids. 20 bids worth $40 million. We're going to win 5 of those. And our bidding investment is 2% of the $40 million. So that's $800,000 just to get $10 million worth of business. So let's have a look at why this is important. This is the key thing, all right? The key thing here is, put those numbers back on the screen, Mark. Let's look at this. Let's say we're able to double our win rates, go from 25 to 50%. And that's not unheard of at all if you bid selectively. Then we get tools, we get trained, we get our proper techniques to be able to really become efficient with bidding. And that's the key. Spend a small amount to get trained can have a really big improvement in the bottom line. Let's say you manage to get your bid investment ratio from 2% to 1%. A lot of companies are even less than that. See how those numbers play out. Right, so what that does is this. Instead of finding $40 million worth of bids to chase, we only have to find $20 million. Put far less pressure on the BD and salespeople to find those opportunities to chase. We only have to then submit 10 bids, not 20. So I've just halved your workload for the year. All right, those people who've got a mountain to climb, not sure how they're going to get it all done. I've just halved your workload by bidding more selectively. And what more importantly for your CFOs or your CEOs or your GMs of your company, you've actually taken your bidding investment from 800,000 to 200,000. Who wants a pay rise? Everyone wants a pay rise. Go to your boss and say, I've got a way that we can cut our bidding investment down by 75%. Are you okay with that? And if we can I share in some of that with you? So that's how to do it. Focus on those things, but you need to measure it. We cannot do this if we don't measure. We can't improve what we don't measure. All right. That's the measurement side of things. Straightforward, set your goals, set what you want to achieve for the year, focus on the metrics, and it's a really good place to start the year. Great to do that now. And we can, and those tables on the screen, if you can multiply those, do those, set up a little spreadsheet, it's an easy thing to do. All right, Mark, hope I haven't confused too many people, but I think it's the numbers, pretty straightforward, simple maths. Let's move on to the next bit, which is what's missing.
Before we do that, just so you know, folks, that's the end of the maths for the day, right? So, but take away some of the context. You know, there's sort of 3 key takeouts for that session. And first one is get that investment mindset. So get the data, track the data, and make sure that you're thinking every time you elect to play, you're going to get a return on your investment. The second thing that Nigel was saying is track those metrics and results. If you don't measure, you don't know whether you're improving. And then the third key point around getting strategic is pick those that you've got the best chance of winning. And that's a whole other workshop in its own regard, but typically it's things like the ones where you understand the customer's buying motivations, where you've got a solid capability and ability to deliver, and that you know you can be competitive in the market that you operate. So so that was just my little addition, Nigel, to your bit, and now I'll get back in my lane and click the slides, and over to you to talk about what's missing quite often in some of the bids we look at.
I know, and look, we are talking to people who are typically words-based folks, but the message here is add value to your business. As a bid person, as a words person, add value to your business, and make sure that you can measure your value. We're talking about your contribution to your business and get your value to your business. So let's now have a look at what's often missing. If you do add that value, what's often missing in some of the bids that we've seen. We review hundreds of bids a year. In fact, we've got a service that just you can give us your bid that we haven't worked on. Give us your bid, and we'll give you the insight using our tool to say how you scored out of in your bids. And we focus on 10 areas typically. And this spider web diagram is an output from that bid review process that we have. And the 10 points or the 10 areas that we focus on are those ones: strategy, messages, client focus, competitive focus. They're the three in that top right-hand corner. Compliance, bid content. Number 6, packaging and binding is not as important these days in online submission, but we've still got to tidy it up to submit. Structure, page design and graphics, and writing style. Big one on writing style, and Mark's going to talk more about writing style in the second half. So let's have a look at the typical spider diagram, we call it, output from that we get. If you did everything well, the blue on the outside would be 5 out of 5 for each one of those 10 areas. But the red line in the middle is the typical sort of outputs that we see from companies. And the bits that are missing, typically missing, that we find are those in the top right-hand corner, those first 3. Strategy, messaging. Is your strategy clear? Is your story clear? Is it clear from a reader's perspective? What's your client focus? And are you really competitive? And that competitive story, not just we're putting something up, but what are we putting up in the context of what the market can offer? Are we really providing that competitive focus? They're the 3 things largely that we see are missing in many bids. So we move on, Mark. We can then see that, let's talk about each one of those strategy measures. These are some of the things that we see. This is some of the feedback, the reports that we write. Some of the typical areas, and one of the biggest ones is it's all about us. All right, it's all about what we do, and you're not presenting a very clear story about why your bid should be selected over the other choices that the company has. No key themes, and this is not clear. Not this. I'm reading it and I'm saying, sure, I've answered the questions, but the purpose, the reason why it should be selected, not there. The second one of those, Mark, do you want to add something? You're about to say something there.
I was just going to say, just so the people on the call understand, these are really the criteria that we apply when we're reviewing documentation. So essentially, we're looking to the extent that these requirements are satisfied in what we read. So if you see, if you're seeing all of them, then obviously kudos to you, top drawer, you the blue line around the edge. If some of them are missing, then they're not. And we've picked these 3, strategy, message, client focus, and one more, which Nigel will go on to a sec, because those are the top right-hand quadrant side, the customer-facing content that is often what's missing. And there's very good reasons for that, right? So, but the fact is they're often gaps.
And they're the ones, aren't they, Mark, that turn the dial the most in terms of winning. Right. So this is number 2 is the biggest one. Number 2 is the lack of customer focus and the lack of customer focus in bids, and then the lack of the competitive dimension in bids. It's, we talk about the 3 C's of bidding: getting your focus on the customer, getting your competitive edge right, and then getting your story, your own capability, your own what's your own capability to that put in the context of the 3 C's. How can you win, and what's your story that's better than what your market can offer that the customer is going to value? That's the key thing here. So they're the 3 things are missing. Focus on those 3 things, get your bids better. But how do you do that? There's a whole bunch of tools and techniques and training that you can take to make these jobs easier to do that. So Mark, I'm going to hand over to you, given the interest of time, to focus on the next bits.
All right, thanks, Nigel. So that's so it's great to get that independent benchmark of where you're at. I've worked inside of corporates for a long period of time, and you quite often get into the same routine of saying, sure, I've cut through with my messaging, and sure, I'm customer focused, but sometimes it takes that additional external lens and a international benchmark of standards to measure yourself against. So that's a really good idea to work out what's missing. So some of the things that you might need to put in, there's a load of things, and we've just dialed it down to sort of 3 core concepts. And The first of those really is to, and this sounds like quite straightforward, right? But is to write really, really clearly. So you can get so much further in bidding just by thinking about the right reading experience from your customer's perspective at a different level. And I have this mantra, this is a personal mantra one, that you want your readers to get it first time, right? So if they're reading 6 or 7 documents and you're making them read stuff over and over again to understand it, it just gets too hard. So let's have that in our mindset. And here's some metrics that you can use to write clearly. So the first thing is to understand how language becomes complex, and then watch out for it. So what I'm going to share with you is some standards that you can use to apply to your writing. And a lot of these are embedded in some of the writing tools around, and with with generative AI coming onto the scene in the future, a lot of this will go away, but we all, as bidding professionals, need to understand the mechanics of what makes language complex. So here's some guidelines you can use. Keep your words per sentence within that range. That comes from a lot of newspapers, online copy. The human brain is pretty handy, can remember up to 15, 18 words, and then it struggles to log them and connect them all together. So keep your sentences simple. Break up your text into lots of paragraphs with 2 or 3 sentences. Passive voice, another topic for another day, but essentially keep that down to under 10%. So I visited the shops is active, the shops were visited is passive, and because you lose the who did what, it gets a little less clear. So keep your passive voice stuff down. Keep your bullet point lists to just less than 5. If you want to tell somebody that you've murdered somebody, put it at bullet point number 15 and they'll never know, right? So because they won't read past the 5th one, right? Should have said that on a recorded webinar, but there we are. And then just think about your language and just cut out the stuff that doesn't really matter. The good news is that there's tools that do this for you. I don't know if pop a yes in the chat if you know where the readability checker is inside a Word. But I think I forget where you find it these days. I'll have to find, and then options, and then or document stats, and then you have to tick something. Anyway, you'll find it because it gets easy to find stuff in Word these days. Just do the search at the top, but it gives you all the key metrics that you need, right? The number of sentences per paragraph, words per sentence, and importantly, there's 2 measures of complexity: the Flesch reading ease and the Flesch Kincaid grade level. So let's just concentrate on the Flesch Kincaid grade level, and without worrying too much about the science behind it, you're just looking for that number to be less than 12, and it roughly equates to the year level of a human being in an educational establishment that that their education is able to understand that stuff, right? So the lower the number, the easier the text is to read, whereas the Flesch reading ease goes the other way, right? The bigger the number is better, right? So so use those things. They're wrapped up in things like Grammarly, but I think essentially most stuff goes back to what's called now the document stats capability in Word. All right, the second thing is to write persuasively, and for us that's all around trust. So we're embracing this concept that Francis Frey and Anne Morris published in the Harvard Business Review 4 years ago, and it's called the trust triangle, right? And we find it really interesting in terms of the way that we write, behave, engage with customers to help build that trust and get them to want to work with us. The first part of it is empathy, and that's fundamental, right? In the sense that through the way that we communicate, that we believe that we get your customers to believe that you care about them and their success first and foremost. And if you think about engagements, you might be having, you're going to get a builder in to do an extension or something like that. You really want them to understand that it's a big impost on your life, and that they want this to be a good experience. So that's a really key part of trust. Logic's the next bit. Know that you want your customers to believe you on the basis that what you're saying is reasonable. You can see judgment and credibility in what you're suggesting, whether it's a construction methodology or a product design process or a project that's in existence itself. So does it kind of make sense is the logic check. And then finally is the authenticity bit. And I don't know if anyone else gets called the wordsmith, or the people that make it look pretty, or the sales guy and the blurb, and don't let the selling get mixed up with delivery, all that type of stuff. Chuck it out the window. It's all about authenticity. So what we say needs to be a representation of the real deal, the real people involved, and how the experience is going to be for your customer. So So that's a really powerful concept that we embrace in the Bid Academy and actually in our consulting business as well, in all areas. But in the context of this, it's around writing persuasively. And funnily enough, it's not about flowery words and putting lots of sizzle on the top. So that's just a core underpinning concept. The other simple thing that you can do to write more persuasively is adopt what we call the ISBP principle, which is, and I'll just take you through what that is, but this is essentially a construct that gets you to put the right type of information in the right order to elicit a positive response in the people that are reading your stuff or are experiencing your experience. So that could be a presentation, it could be an executive summary, it could be a cover letter, it could be an email asking for that pay rise that Nigel was talking about before, because you just smashed your bidding investment ratio by 75%. Or it could be the structure of your whole documentation or a response or a question. So it's a really, really flexible concept. Some of you on the call may have heard it before, but so ISBP, here's how it goes. So what we're advocating is the first part of any given piece of communication reflects the issue behind the thing. So what really matters to the customer? Why are they asking this question, or why have they requested this piece of information? So you're looking to show that you understand their drivers, you understand the problems in their world. And this is a really good opportunity to show that you understand their landscape and what they're actually asking for and why. The S then stands for solution, which is everybody's favorite place. This is where you get to talk about what you're going to do. But in the context of ISBP and writing persuasively, it's how will you meet the customer's objectives or solve their problems? So you might have a data technology stack that is incredibly complicated and does a gazillion things, but you will be a lot more persuasive if you can focus that core capability onto the 3 or 4 or 5 key things that tech will do for them, right? So how is your solution going to address that issue? Next up is the benefit, which is kind of the answer to the so what question. How is that good for the customer? There's 3 ideas on the screen there. It's a little bit small, but 3 benefits. It could be some sort of return on investment, reducing risk, so on and so forth. So, and if you can tie those benefits to your differentiators and things that only you can do, happy days in the persuasion department. And then last bit is the P for proof, and that's really just providing data or examples or case studies that show where you've solved this problem before. And we did a whole load of analysis late last year on a lot of questions in a range of customer proposals, and the I and the P are the bits that are almost always missing, and then the B sporadically appears in between, depending. So great opportunity to apply that framework and so on and so forth in all of your communications, but specifically in your bids and proposals. Any comments on that, Nigel? I know you're particularly close to ISBP.
ISBP, wonderful. As you said, Mark, very flexible, can be used in a number of circumstances, and you'll find once you start using, it's a bit like Pringles, Mark. Once you pop, you can't stop. That's what ISBP is like, isn't it?
Never heard that before. I like it. What's your favorite flavor? We should move on. All right. So, So that's the second thing. First one was write clearly. Second idea is to write persuasively. There's a whole load of other stuff around that wraps around the edges of persuasion and the psychology of how it works and why it works and all that type of good stuff. But if there's one thing to take away, like this framework, you'll find building it into your thinking will help massively increase the potency of the bids that you put together. Okay, the third concept is to use what we call the front pages, use them really well. So by the front pages, I mean the cover page, the cover letter, and the exec summary. And the fundamental shift that we're trying to do is to make those 3 crucial parts of your submissions all about the customer and not about you. So why is that? Well, what we see is that, and this sort of talks back to the spider diagram that Nigel showed you at the beginning, sort of mediocre bids are often just about me, what I want to do, my capabilities, and they might have generic or no messaging at all. And by messaging, I'm really thinking about, you might have heard of value propositions, but I really like to think of them as promises to the customer, right? So what promises am I going to make to my customer, and are they relevant and interesting? Winning bids, on the other hand, focus entirely on the customers, their problems, and how can I, as a vendor, help them get there where they want, and they have specific, very targeted messaging. Okay, and by using the front page as well, what we're trying to do is establish the benchmark. So in the olden days, when they used to print out stuff and then the poor evaluator had 5 bound copies of this, that, and the other on a big old desk, the idea was to catch their eye with a snazzy front page that's got something right in the middle that it sets them apart from the rest. And that concept still applies today in the online world, right? So we're looking to catch the eye, engage the reader, and set the benchmark against which everyone else is going to be judged. So the front pages, let's just have a little bit more of a deep dive about those. So on the left-hand side, we've got the cover page. In the middle, we've got the cover letter. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a 2-page exec summary. And in our little graphic here, we're sort of trying to show what a good structure looks like, and in particular, show the consistency of your story and how it can evolve and expand as you work through the front pages, right? So let's have a think about the headline. We think of that as the title. If you wrote a book, you don't typically just call it book, right? You give it something on the title page that's to do with what's coming next, right? So we call those the headlines. That's the overarching #1 objective that the customer's looking to achieve. And I mentioned the word promise, so it could be your key promise that you're going to make to your customer, right? We're going to reduce your operating expenditure by 25%, or we're going to increase your staff retention by 9%, or we're going to do this, that, and the other. So what's really good is tell a story all the way through. So let's see what happens on the cover letter. So essentially what we want to do is be repeating the headline. So we're repeating that message on the cover letter. In this case, we're introducing sort of 3 win themes. So 3 promises or outcomes that we're going to deliver for the customer. So you're going to get that, by introducing our operating technology management system, your costs of such and such will go down by 25% or whatever it is. So we want 3 key things, not 100, not 10, not 20, just 3 things that are the most powerful, that separate you from the competition and which will connect and resonate most with the customer. So that's in your cover letter. Then we sort of roll on into the exec summary where we've got a little bit more space. So we can set the scene. Firstly, to show them that we get the vibe, then we can tell a bit more of a story around each of your win themes, right? We might bring in a benefit statement, which is a clear promise, if you like, or a value proposition. These are the words you might see. We use benefit statement and use particular structures that are designed to have maximum impact. And then we talk about the highlights and the proof under each of those themes. Because we've got a bit more space in the exec summary, we can build out the story a little bit more. And then we do that again for the other win themes and put some closing preamble and that type of thing in there. So those are the 3 things that we think that will help you push that spider diagram, the top right-hand side of it, out by having a much more of a customer-centric space. So that's kind of where we're. Any questions, folks? Nigel, any final comments before we move on? Just conscious we've got to get rolling on time.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's great to see these, and but getting trained on how to use them, I think it's one of the key things here. So we can all develop and learn. So yeah, Mike, let's move on to if there's no questions, or if there are questions rolling in, we will get to them.
All right, sounds like a plan. All right, folks, well done. You've got through Nigel's math section. We've had a look at what's missing in bids. We've chucked out there's a zillion other things, but the 3 things that we think you can concentrate on. Let's talk about how you actually get that done, right? So what's really interesting is that a lot of us fall into bidding just out of interest. You might or might not be interested, but I'm a professionally trained engineering geologist, for goodness sake. Nigel, you're a mechanical and electrical engineer. Mechanical engineer, beg your pardon, none of that electrical nonsense. So folks, those on the call, be really interested if you just pop in the chat what your first qualification was, and look, we're just looking to build up a picture of where people come from, because our role as in the Bid Academy is to try to change that and have people elect to come into the bidding industry. But there's at the moment it's populated by a lot of people that have come from rich and exciting backgrounds, which I think it is to the benefit of the profession, actually. All right, so we'll fall into it, right? So what we tend to do is we use our current writing skills. Sometimes we pick up habits or beliefs from other people. Some of those are good, some of them are not so good. And then we pretty much fake it till we make it, or do our best till we get by. Oh, some linguistics on there. Oh, anyway, that's Rob. Nice one.
Pharmaceutical chemists. film to this? Some
Film and TV.
Fancy, more graphics.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, so we do our best. So so essentially the point is that bid writing is different, right? It's kind of one to few. So marketing communications, one to many, for example. The thing about bid writing is it's often short-lived. So the shelf life of our bid communications is quite small. So again, that brings in the need for certain attributes. We're in a competitive environment most of the time, and we need to do that persuasive stuff, right? So because of that, bid writing is quite unique. So what do, right? We can carry on as we are. We can continue to pick up habits, some which may be good, some may not be so good, or we can go and learn some stuff, right? So, and you've got a couple of options. You can do it yourself. Google is phenomenal, and ChatGPT is adding a whole other thing to the world around information and how you access it. You can do conventional training, as we call it, or you can take a different pathway, which is the one that we want to talk to you a little bit about now for the next 5 minutes or so. So what is conventional training? By that, I'm talking about, your traditional 2 or 3 hour course. So let's say you want to learn how to write more persuasively, or you want to master cut through messaging and strategy and all that type of stuff. You've got a couple of choices. Well, you can do nothing, or you can at the moment go on a conventional training course, which is a short-term thing. Now, we've done a load of those and we still do them today, but we see those challenges in terms of hanging on to the content, right? So typically the experience there is a lot of stuff. Most of it's coming one way. You might do a bit of some exercises and things like that, but the duration is typically quite short. So, and by short, it might be an afternoon or even 2 days, that type of thing. But a lot of stuff in, and it's really hard to grasp and maintain that. So the outputs of that are dependent on your personal interpretation of what you've learned in the world that you operate in. You don't if you don't use what you've learned, you tend to forget it quite quickly. And what that means is you typically lose most of the content that you've learned very quickly, and you get a low ROI on your investment. So we put a lot of effort in the academy into shifting the way that we deliver training, and we've brought online some what we call hybrid learning programs, which essentially allow you to ingest and assimilate and master the skills in a completely different way. So what that means is better results, right? With 2 programs that we have in mind to talk to you about. We call them our modular learning programs. The Bid Accelerator is the first one. Essentially, that's where you master the best practice concept across the entire bidding cycle. So if I'll come on to who it's for next, but essentially we break that learning down into 12 modules. There's an examination and graduation session. We run live group coaching to help you embed the concepts progressively as you work through each of the modules, and typically about 1 or 2 hours of effort per week for you. And at the end of it, you get that beautiful Bid Accelerator micro credential. That's ideal for those that are new to bidding. They might want to upskill the end-to-end capability of a team, and it fits really well into the working smarter, not harder, in the concepts of, for example, some of that methodology that around the maths that Nigel shared before is one of the modules that we do in the Bid Accelerator program. The second one is the Certified Bid Writer program, That's a lot deeper dive into, as you might expect, the bid writing portion. So Bid Accelerator covers the whole thing. Bid Writer just covers the key writing bit. It's the only writing course that we can find where you actually have to do some writing. So we ask you to go through 9 modules, layer up the learning around writing clearly, writing persuasively, learning those front page concepts, 3 or 4 course assessments that you do, examination, graduation, live group coaching, as we said before, and a similar amount of effort per week. So that's good for those that are looking into getting to bid writing as a career. You might be a bid coordinator that's looking to step up and have more influence. You might be a bid writer that wants to extend their skills, and you might want to move out of administrative support for bids into actually doing them. So, and again, if you're in an organization where you just want to wholesale uplift the capability, that's a good way to go. All right, so what's different about this is we break the learning down into chunks. You get the live group support and coaching support to help you embed it. All of the content is accessed through a learning management system, which means you can digest the content whenever you like. So, and that's proving really popular with our busy bidding community that might have busy week or two where they're getting a bid in, they can still keep up with the program and find the content when their brain is ready to learn, which is really good. So fundamentally, the learning experience for you is digest the content through the learning management system online, and there's some exercises in there for you to help embed. We do that live coaching session stuff that I spoke about, and the idea is that you test a concept in your business, and then your coach will help you embed that concept through the program. And what that does, it gives you time. All right, it gives you time to test and develop your concepts and make sure you've embedded them as we work systematically through the program. Periodically, you'll find a fun quiz on the way through, so to help you check your learning. And so the idea of all of these different ways of learning are working together to help you embed the content in yourself, and also help, through the support of your coach, embed the the changes that you might want to make as a result of what you've learned in your organization. And we work as a cohort through the program together, so you get to know your peers. And we found that a lot of the feedback we've had is that that's a really enriching experience, and people are sharing across industries and so on and so forth. So whether it's the Accelerator or the Bid Writer program, what we've built into those are the things that we know work, right, in industry based on a zillion years of doing this stuff, right? So you learn what matters and how to have the most impact. Everything that you'll learn is practical, tried and tested in the real world. And the other key thing about the modular approach is it will break your learning into progressive sequence, so that you move along and elevate your skills bit by bit, rather than trying to drink from the fire hose and digest everything you've got. And the other thing, because it's all in the LMS, it will allow you to fit in with your busy lifestyle, right? So 1 or 2 hours a week of time. The only fixed obligation is the hour of power. But if you can't make one of those weeks, we record them and upload them to the learning management system. So what that means is you can digest this content when your brain is ready. All right, so we're doing okay for time, just another couple of minutes. Just to let you know, the next intake for the 2 programs are just coming up, 31st of Jan for the Bid Accelerator, 7th of Feb. Course fees are on the screen. Those include essentially access to all the learning materials, live coaching sessions, all the things that you would expect. What's really important is in both programs, you get a personal action plan, so that you're actually capturing learning as you go and building that into a way forward that you can then implement to drive real change. So that's kind of where we're at, I think. Nigel, any comments at that point? Any questions from the floor? Oh, question from Naomi.
There's been a few questions, Mark, which I've answered along the way. Some great questions as well. Probably haven't got a lot of time to move into them at this point, but some great questions which I've answered in part. But we're going to stay on the line if anyone wants to stay on and ask us some more questions. We're here to
some other dates for the some of the dates for the Bid Writer courses. Yeah, we kind of typically have 4 intakes a year. So the first one's up in a couple of weeks, then the next one will be three months away. So so there is a bit of flexibility there. I'll just close out this session really quickly. Just in terms of where now, if you want to take action and get a hold of your 2024, some really easy low touch things that you could do. Our marketing team will be out tomorrow with a summary of this session. They'll send you a recording. So if you want to have another listen and chew on it, there'll be some information coming your way tomorrow. So watch out for that. I think Lara is on the call. She's going to pop in the chat a link. So we have an information pack that you can essentially get a load of information around each of the programs, whether that's a little bit more about the specific learning outcomes for each of the modules, a little bit more around what's involved in the program and how it works. So you can click on the link in the chat for an info pack for either the Bid Accelerator or the Certified Bid Writer program. The other thing you can do is just stay on the call. We're going to finish in the next 30 seconds or so. Stay on the call for a chat, and we can just find out whether there's a good fit on your side and if we can give you any more information. Or the last thing you can do is book a call with either myself or Nigel just through the links in the chat. Thank you very much for the time. I think we've gone a little bit over, so appreciate you staying the course, and hope to hear from you soon.